Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. My name is Sloane Freemont, and I'm your host. This week, I have back one of my favorite guests, Dr. Erhard Vogel, and we've been doing a monthly series over. It's almost been a year now that we've been joining each other each month to have conversations on how to live our highest potential, how to actually experience ourselves, and how to be engaged in life and experience life from that way. But today I want to talk about something a little different. I want to talk about what our pets teach us about life. Erhard, I know you're a dog lover. I'm a dog lover. I have a dog. I also have a cat. But this topic to me is fun. And it never ceases to amaze me the joy that my dog brings to me every day. No matter what's going on in my life, my dog brings joy. So I wanted to talk about that today and see where that takes us.
Yes, okay. Well, so you want me to respond to that?
Sure. Yes.
Um, I think the dogs I know, not just my dogs, but I know other dogs. I'm friends with other dogs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there is a commonality. They seek joy,
Yeah.
they live joy.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that interferes with that, they don't want.
Right.
They don't sit around letting that happen to them all the time, displeasurable things. Or what they do is they either fight it or just walk away from it,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they're absolutely loyal.
Yes.
They know you and like you. They will be loyal to you. And if they meet your relatives whom they've never met before, they will be loyal to them. That
Yes.
they will know that they are your relatives. They're very perceptive.
Yes.
And they have much more of an intelligence than we humans give them a credit for because they can relate to us through their senses and through
Mm-hmm.
their subtleties.
Mm-hmm.
And humans often miss that. They
Right.
miss they don't know that that is happening, you know. That's why humans can, so often one of the terrible things when there's a dog in a family and he's part of the family and he's loved and so on, then they have a child and they get rid of the dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, okay, if you had a child and then have another child, you get rid of the first one because it's in the way now.
Right. Right. I know.
You know, that's a terrible thing for dogs, because uh, in general, animals are very dear,
Mm-hmm.
very loving. They want to love.
Mm-hmm.
So nowadays, where we have all of these YouTube videos, you see videos of, a duck loving a dog, or
Right.
a cat loving an owl, and an owl loving the cat. And of course, the examples of dogs loving people is just, beyond count. Yeah. So we can learn a lot from their loving, their patience,
Yeah.
uh,
And their forgiveness. I've
and
noticed with my
oh,
dog.
forgiveness.
Yeah.
Hurts my heart sometimes how much they forgive the behaviors of humans.
Yes. 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 And I know I got my dog almost 2 years ago now. So this was when I got my dog, it was the start of everything shutting down. And I remember when I got him, how my face actually hurt from smiling because I hadn't smiled in such a long time. And this little 10-pound dog brought so much joy to my life. And as
Uh-huh.
I watched my dog, and actually the story of my dog is he was a rescue and they were actually going to put him down because they said he was too aggressive. And the obvious thing was he was in a shelter. He was scared. He hated it, very obvious things. And since I've had him, I've not once ever had an issue with him. It's been nothing like that. It's been actually the complete opposite. The love, the loyalty, all the things that we've talked about. And as I've seen my dog really, as I watched him when I first got him versus how he is now, that not only does he bring me joy, but what I love to experience with him is the way others experience joy when they see him. Because my dog he's a smiler. So when we go on a walk or if I take him to the
Mhm.
farmer's market, he is smiling the whole time and he is absolutely loving life. And I'll tell people, and people will walk up to me, they're smiling because they're watching him smile. And I'll tell people, this is his favorite day and this is his favorite place because no matter where he is, that's how he acts. He's having the best day of his life and he is loving exactly where he's at. And
Right.
and people always stop and they'll comment on that. Like, well, I can tell, or he's such a loving dog, or whatever the comment might be. And I I seeing that example in my dog, there's so much for me as I observe him, like, wow, how can I show up that way in life?
Right. And I was just concurrently going to speak about how dogs live in the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, right now is the moment which is the pleasure of being alive for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not they don't remember anything from the past,
Right.
because if you bring them towards anything in the past, maybe if it was happy, their tail will wag before they get there.
Yeah.
Or they will put their ears and their head down when they remember something that caused them pain,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
difficulty, censure from us or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they live in the moment, they're conscious in the moment, which many humans are not.
Right.
They're, they are somewhat in the memory of the past or the fearful anticipation of the future, or at least the concerned or the worried anticipation of the future.
Mm-hmm.
Dogs don't have that.
Right.
Cats don't have that either.
I think the most laid back cat on earth. If And I've had several cats. But this cat I've never seen a cat act like this. I always say if he had shoulders, he'd just shrug them and walk out of the room because the cat literally cares about nothing. He just loves to be around people. He wants to be wherever people are, but nothing bothers him. Not even the vacuum. The vacuum doesn't even bother him. He'll just look at it. And when what you were saying about the perception of dogs, I have a friend who I'll take him over to see her, and she's currently sick and going through chemotherapy, and so anyway, it's really for her. She loves seeing the dog. Makes her laugh. He smiles and he loves being around her. And there's a certain point every single time we get to the stoplight right before we go to her house, he'll start whining in anticipation and in excitement because he knows where we're at and he knows where we're going. And it's the
Right,
exact same spot every single time. And
right,
and
right.
I'll just look at him and he just knows, and he's like jumping out of his little car seat because he's so excited. But that perception of that he knows, that he's aware of that, and he responds to that every single time. It still amazes me.
I have one big German Shepherd, and he's lying at my feet underneath this desk right
Mm-hmm.
now
Mm-hmm.
because just before you, I had sessions,
Mm-hmm.
therapy sessions. It's He has, since he was maybe 6 months old, adopted that when I come down to my office, which is on where I live,
Mm-hmm.
when I come down to the office, he goes with me and he lies there in sessions, absolutely quiet, unless somebody cries in the session. And I'm not really trying to make them cry, but I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes they do.
Yeah.
Then he gets up and comes over to them, puts his head on their hands in their lap and looks up at them, and then they have to smile or laugh
Right.
because he's concerned.
Right. How could
So
they
he,
not? Yeah.
and it's like on my first session is at noon. Around 11 o'clock, he starts on Mondays or Thursdays, he starts to get ready to go there,
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
come down to the office. I could never go here without him. So they anticipate, they learn, they know, and they also like to have a responsibility in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
That's his responsibility to do these sessions and be a calming influence.
Yeah. My dog, I take him for a walk every morning. That's our routine. And we go around the neighborhood every morning, same path. And one of the things I started doing when I got him was when we would wake up and we were getting ready to go, I would hold him and tell him all the great things that were going to happen that day. So we're going to go on the walk. You're going to get to eat, this treat later on, or you're going to get to sit in the office with me while I work, whatever it is. And I was telling him all the great things for the day, and he'd get excited and his head would tilt, and his ears would kind of turn either direction. And I started doing that for him, and then I started doing that for myself because it was so fun to see the dog get so excited about it. And then
Yeah.
would start doing it for myself. Like, okay, here's the great things that I'm going to do. And then the dog would not, and we would go out on the walk, and we would, now it's just become such a routine. I don't even think about it. I just get up and I do that activity. But when I take him on these walks, and he knows we get up and he's ready to go. He's sitting there waiting. He's ready to go. And on the day, like if it's raining or if I'm, maybe not feeling like I'm ready to go quite yet, he is on guard and ready until I'm ready to take him. And he just sits there and waits for me. And I
Yeah.
love seeing that, like we talked about, that loyalty, but also that, again, he shows up every day happy. He shows up every day for me happy.
You know, um, happiness is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
They make it automatically.
Yeah.
They have the attitude, why not be happy? That's what I want. I'm happy to be happy.
Right.
So
Right.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Right.
And like you were saying too, they're forgiving. If you interfere with their happiness by, telling them that you can't do this or do that and so on, and they may shrink for a moment, and then as soon as you say, okay, they wag their tail and it's forgotten about and they're happy again. Well, it's not entirely forgotten about because they learn not to do it again.
Right.
Some of them do.
Right.
Some of them don't want to.
Right.
Then that's a choice too.
Yeah. Yeah. My dog, I think, dreams or does something similar to dreaming, because sometimes when he sleeps, he'll cry or he'll kick his
Right.
legs a
Or
little bit.
yeah.
Yeah. And it always, to me, it sounds like distress. So I always wake him up because I wake up when he cries like that. And I often, I've looked at my dogs. I don't know his history. He was, like I said, all I know is he was a rescue, and what they had said to the person who rescued him. But my dog was trained very well. He knew commands. He was trained to go on the dog pad. He was trained. He never had an accident in the house. So somebody spent some time with him and cared about him enough to do that. And
Yeah.
so he has some other previous life. I think he was about 2 when I got him. And my friend who really loves him, we used to, he'd sit there and he'd kind of be staring out into space when I first got him. And we were always, our comment was always, I wonder what that dog is thinking about, because we don't know his history. We don't know where he came from. And I often wonder with those dreams, is he thinking about other things from his previous life and then forgetting where he's at? I don't know. It's just, he does it quite a bit though, with the crying in his sleep.
Well, I think dreams are not about thinking. They
Hmm.
come from a different dimension of us,
Yeah.
more from
Yeah.
the subconscious.
Yeah.
And yes, they do dream, and sometimes they whine, and sometimes they run in their dream. I mean, in place while they're
Yeah.
lying
Yeah.
on their side, usually. And, but it's actually when my dog, they do it very seldom, but when they do, I let them go through it. What do you
Yeah.
think about the idea of letting them process whatever is going on without waking them up?
Yeah. I
Even
hadn't, yeah.
even if they're crying out in their dream, to let them
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that. I hear the distress. It sounds to me, I take it as distress, as
right. And
whining.
it may be, yeah.
Yeah. And I want to help him. I want to comfort him. And that actually is probably something I should let him do, is just go through whatever that is that he's going through.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I just had a session before you, and
Hmm.
the person had a dream that was only about 3 lines. It was so brief, such a short paragraph, and she said, "Well, I don't know if there's anything in there." And it was very simple. A very simple scene, was not at all complicated with many things and so on. And I was able to show her where she knew that that's her dream tells you something.
Yeah.
You see, and
Yes.
the dream was telling her that she's not taking care of the element in her by which she makes decisions
Mm,
and by
mm-hmm.
which she takes responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So, in general, we look at that, if we have to name it, as the masculine element,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the feminine, well, that's just a convenience idea, you know. So, that everybody has a masculine and feminine element and their characteristics in themselves, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If we deny one element, uh, like an element of decision making, an element of being responsible to yourself, they usually go together, those two. When you don't, when you deny that and have somebody else do it for you because you need it in your life,
Mm-hmm.
then, but it's then lacking in you. And so her dream had an element where her left breast was caressed and she went into ecstasy, caressed by a man. So
Mm-hmm.
the whole dream with, I mean, I'm giving you a very short synopsis of it, but the whole dream, she is saying to herself, if you were to be exercising your ability to respond, which includes respond to me, to
Mm-hmm.
herself, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you were to exercise that ability, were responsible and were decisive, you would be so ecstatically happy and satisfied, which is what I talked about in class last Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw that that's what that dream was telling her. So our dreams tell us things very clearly, and they say them in a very simple way. And I think most people, well, first of all, most people don't remember their
Right.
dreams,
Yes.
and but you can learn to do that. I have them have a pad of paper in their on their night table and a pen
Mm-hmm.
or pencil,
Mm-hmm.
so that and they can say to themselves at night when I before I go to sleep, I say to myself, I will try my best to
Yes.
remember my dream and write it down.
Yes.
Amazingly, that happens, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And but most people don't see what their dream is saying.
Right.
So it's their dream is saying it to them. It's the subconscious in them speaking to the conscious mind. This is what I, the dreamer, really want. You see?
Yes. Yes, I do. And that's something I've studied over the years off and on and done, like you were saying, tracked my own dreams, really thought about what does this mean for me? What is this saying? What is the message here? And interestingly, I have a recurring dream about one of my cats that died very suddenly. The cat will appear in various dreams, and sometimes I'm protecting it, sometimes it's there just as a maybe in a different scene of the dream, but the cat is there. It's just maybe sitting there. And 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 actually my other cat prior to that one too, he was I think 18 when he passed. And these cats have made appearances in my dreams. And the interesting thing about the cat that died very suddenly is I always feel very close again to that cat after those dreams. I feel I really had a hard time with that one because it was so sudden. I took her in and that was it. That was it. In a couple hours later. And so the those dreams always feel with this particular cat very comforting to me because I feel a connection again to that cat as if she was still in the physical here with me now.
Yeah. So the way I would look at that, I would say that your dream is your way of informing you of something that is desired or something that's going on that isn't desired or whatever, but informing you from the subconscious that this wants to be responded to. This is what
Yeah.
I want to have, you know.
Yeah.
So your cats take your dream, take certain characteristics of your cats to paint the picture to the conscious you, who is not necessarily as aware as the subconscious sometimes, not
Yes.
all the time, but sometimes. And so takes these characteristics to paint the picture that you could understand, by which you could understand yourself. you know.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
then if you know what that dream says, then it behooves you to respond to what you're saying to yourself by actually acting according or upon that, acting upon that. Do you see what I mean?
I do. And which makes me think again about how I used to, like you were suggesting, write down dreams, because I'm not sure if we've ever talked about this on here, but I had a reoccurring dream for probably almost 20 years about an ex-boyfriend from high school. And I didn't even like talking about this dream because I felt somewhat ridiculous still talking about somebody from 20 years ago who I had no contact with, didn't care to. It was really, and so there was a lot of, I felt a lot of, I don't know, guilt maybe, or even shame about having this dream about this person. And always in these scenarios, I would wake up feeling very defeated and very kind of off for the whole day after having these dreams. And as I was going through my own inner work over the past couple of years, the one thing that used to be something for me that I struggled with was the word alone. That word alone, I couldn't even say the word for the longest time because it brought up so much emotion. And through a lot of inner work and just where I was at and ready to face, I guess, what I realized is the feelings that I felt in those dreams about the ex were my definition of what it felt like to be alone. Like I finally made the connection for myself of what that was and
Yeah.
what that was saying to me.
Yeah, now, Sloane, I'm trying to not go into this dream because it wouldn't be appropriate, you know. We're not going to interpret the dream right
Right.
now. But I would say the reason you've had to have that dream is you talking to yourself for 20 years means you haven't listened.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
haven't responded, and
Yes.
you already let the cat out of the bag. You felt ashamed. You did not accept what the dream was telling you. You felt ashamed and so on. You put outer stuff in your
Yes.
response to the inner stuff that was trying to come up. Does that make sense to you?
It does. Yes. And you're exactly right. And
And there is the problem with interpreting dreams.
mhm.
I I think most people cannot interpret their dreams.
Yeah.
It's not that they're not smart enough, it's just they don't get it. People don't get
Yeah.
it. And I think most other people interpreting your dreams is also very dangerous
Yes. Yes.
because they put their stuff on there. The stuff that's going on in them put it on
Yes.
there, including
Yes.
psychologists and so on, you know.
Yes.
Um, I trust my interpretations only in terms of the response of the dreamer when they talk to me about it. I'll go step by step, only little bit at a time, and checking with them on that. Does this ring true to you? Does this what I'm just saying? Does
Yeah.
this feel true to you? Then when they're clear about yes, or when they're saying, I don't know, I can't feel that, then that means I don't want to have it my interpretation. I want to interpret what there is, you know.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what there is often absolutely clear, except for the dreamer. Well, unless there is something that I can see what a dream is about. And
Mhm.
it's very interesting because the moment I look at it in the beginning, it looks to me as empty or confusing as it would to the dreamer.
Mm-hmm.
Then I go through it and say, okay, there's this and this and this and this. And then it becomes very clear. And then we
Yeah.
start talking about it together, and it becomes like, oh, I am saying to myself that I refuse to take I shy away from taking responsibility, which means then responsibility for myself
Yeah. Yeah.
also, or most of all, right?
Mm-hmm.
I shy away from taking responsibility, and therefore I also shy away from taking action, and therefore I also shy away from being strong and clear with myself, you know? So that's what this, and the dream is saying, if you don't shy away from them, that you have pleasure that is as high as ecstasy. Her
Yeah.
dream said that. You see, her dream said that. And then you say to yourself, then, well, what good is it for me to shy away from responsibility, which is just the ability to respond, right?
Yes.
Exercising your ability to respond, responsibility. What good is it for me to deny that? My dream says that's where my greatest pleasure would lie if I were to be so empowered as to be responsible. That also means to be in touch with myself and to be able to listen or feel myself and so on.
Yes.
So, as you said something earlier about relationship with yourself, you know?
Yes. And that, we talk about on all of our other episodes, we've talked about loving ourselves enough to do this, right? To take the time to interpret the message that your dream is saying to you. And it's very easy to, in the case of the dream I mentioned about the ex, I was so fixated on the fact that it was the ex, I couldn't see anything else of the message because I was so focused on, well, why is he showing up? And it wasn't even about him, but I made it about him
That
in my
is the
mind.
point. That
Yes.
is the point. Has nothing to do with him.
Yes.
But your relationship with him reminds you of certain facets of you.
Yes.
And the relationship to those facets is here addressed in your dream.
Yes. Yes.
Whether the dream could be expressing that you want those facets to be more expressed, or it might be saying it's wonderful that those facets are expressed in your life, you know.
Yes. And
The
I
dream will
know it.
make it clear to you by how you feel in the dream, you know.
Yes. It took me 20 years, but yes, I finally get it. And I can say now I don't have that dream anymore. It's been probably over a year, maybe even more. But yes, I
Have
understand it now.
have you made true what the dream wanted you to know and act upon?
Yes. There's a long list. And like you said, I don't want to go into all the details of
No,
it
right,
because
we don't.
honestly, I'm not prepared. There was a lot there. There was a lot to unpack. And I think it was also very confronting to unpack those things as I went through it. But, that was what needed to happen. And I mean, it's easy to look back now and see that's what that was, right? But as just like with the person you worked with, but as I was going through it, I can remember those days. And sometimes I'd have the dream 5 times a week, and I'd just be exhausted by the end of the week from the drain on my interpretation of it at the time. But of course, it's always easy to look back and interpret when you know something, but at the time, I just didn't know it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you're talking about unpacking, uh, was that good for you to unpack that?
Yes, it was what was keeping me stuck.
Okay, so could you see then having unpacked it and moving ahead is actually pleasurable and valuable and good for your life? So
Completely. Yes.
there is the lesson in that.
Yes.
Why did I avoid that for 20 years? Do you see? Why did it
Yeah.
take so long? Next time I don't have to.
Yes, my avoidance, and I know mine was to avoid pain. And my avoidance of the pain for 20 years was a million times worse than just going through the unpacking.
Was the cause of a lot of pain. Whereas,
Exactly.
whereas unpacking it doesn't cause pain.
No.
Unpacking pain causes success and freedom and pleasure.
Yes, and I can see that completely. I've experienced that as
Hanging
we talk
on to
about.
pain increases it.
Yes. Yes. And we talk about every time we talk about experiencing it, right? Not taking your word for it, experiencing it. And that's what I experienced. I can remember coming to that realization and actually starting to, like, I actually laughed. I was like, that's what this was? Like, this whole time I was trying to hide and escape and not face it, and in the end it was what was keeping me stuck and holding me back from the things that I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's we could go on for hours about dreams, I'm sure, but so let's go back to our topic about what pets teach us about life. We've kind of went several different directions with that today, and I guess the reason why I wanted to talk about this was because for myself, I think I don't know. There's been my pretty much my whole life I've always had a pet. I've since I was young, I've always loved animals. I've always um you know required that in my life, really, to have that type of companionship. And what I really wanted to just mention or talk about today was that how just how much we can learn, how much our pets show us every day if we're present enough to be with them and see what they're showing us.
Yeah.
um there's been times where I've had pets and I walk in and out of the door and I didn't even acknowledge them or stop to pet them,
Yeah.
and I look back on that now and no, that's not how I want to interact with my pets. But that those short, quick interactions when you're able to do that with your pet, there's that feeling inside that's like there's nothing better than when I get home and my dog is turning in
Well, this
circles
is,
and wagging his tail.
that's another point. Even though you may have disregarded them on their way out, they will just treat you with the greatest joy and pleasure. When you come back, they don't hold a grudge.
Right. I
They
know. And
don't.
I watched my dog do that. I remember the first time that I don't know, maybe I was whatever. I brushed him off. I was tired, whatever. Come back into the room and he's greeting me like he's just seen me for the first time in a month. And I remember experiencing that and being just like, wow, like just there's these examples right in front of me that I'm not taking full advantage of, I guess is how it felt when I first started seeing this with my own dog.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about them not holding a grudge, that is similar to what I was talking about before, that they live in the present, right? They don't hold on to negativity.
Yes.
Humans, there are a lot of humans who make it their life task to collect negative experiences, hold on to them, and share them with
Yes.
others. They
Yes.
want others to feel the negativity too.
Yeah. And you're
Animals
exactly
don't do
right.
that. Animals don't do that.
No, no, they don't. And I had an experience with my cat. His name is Mitch, and he again is the most laid back cat ever. And he rarely ever does anything bad. But one time he did. He was tearing up something or something, and I kind of raised my voice at him, and I was like, Mitch, stop. And I got kind of mad because I thought he was going to shred whatever it was, and I wanted it. And he did something so disarming. He just sat down and looked at me. He didn't run
Yes.
off. He
Yeah.
didn't, recoil or anything. He just sat down
No.
and looked at me. And I remember I was so caught off guard, and it was very disarming. I was like, wow. Again, another example of a pet just not showing you a different way. And I've never ever raised my voice, even at my dog. I don't, rarely, if ever, because he doesn't. But I've never, that really changed my view once he did that. That was like an experience I had that felt really different with an
So
animal.
if a person were to do something negative to you And if it's appropriate, you were to, excuse me, sit down and just look at the person instead of fighting them, right?
Right. Right.
You stand or sit there and just look at them.
Right.
How disarming that would be.
I
So
know.
you learned a valuable lesson
I
from this.
did. I
Yeah.
did. Yeah. And I feel the same with my dog. Every day I'm learning those kinds of things. And so anyway, I just wanted to talk about that today. It's a fun topic. Hopefully the listeners maybe start to look at their pets in a different way. Start to see the lessons that the pets and that could be any pet. It doesn't necessarily have to be a dog or a cat. It can be any pet, any pet that you have.
Yeah. 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 I mean, fish are somewhat less easy to read than
Yeah.
dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I will give any sort of yeah, any fish, anything like that. But yeah, it's pets are amazing and I thought it would be a fun topic for today.
Yeah. Yet I've seen videos of sharks cuddling with people.
Yeah, and when they're in the people will be in the cage and the shark will come up or even like you see the dolphins or like the really big, I'm not sure, whales of some type and they're playing ball back and forth
Yeah, yeah,
in the boats and stuff. Like those kinds of things are, you see those things and it's just the amazement of what animals do and how they
yeah.
interact with humans.
Now, another thing with animals, mostly they're honest.
Yeah.
I say mostly because my dogs, like I have a little dog, a schnauzer, she
Mm-hmm.
lies sometimes. She lies. But it's mostly about food, that she
Mm,
hasn't been fed.
mm-hmm. I have one
Not,
like that.
she's never fed enough, but she also comes up with, "You didn't feed me." And she has
Mm-hmm.
that, because I know that, because she has that look with her that stares at me, that signals, now is time to feed me. And
Mm-hmm.
I can feed her, and she'll wolf it down, and half an hour later comes with that same look, sits in front of me, stares at me, now is time to feed me, which implies you didn't feed me before.
Right. Right.
But otherwise, like my German Shepherd, the German Shepherd doesn't, the male, he's like almost 3 years old. He doesn't
Mm-hmm.
know how to lie.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't even know the concept, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's also because he's males are a little bit less subtle about a lot of things, you know.
Yeah. My
At
dog does
least I can
this.
say that about him.
My dog does this thing with his food that I call the sniff and stare because he'll sniff the food and then he'll stare into space as if, why did you give me this? Right.
Yeah,
And he
it's not
wants
good.
he wants something on it, either these treats I have, just little toppers or whatever it is. And um it's an interesting thing when your dog becomes, you know, well, I call him a little man diva because he'll play these games with his food. And for a while I played the game. I didn't know. I thought, well, I was just supposed to do this or, as I was getting to learn him. And now I've realized his games with food. And so it was really hard for me just to walk away and leave it. And if he was hungry, he would eat it. And that was really hard for me at first because, I'm like, well, it's food. Aren't you hungry? You've eaten this before. Why is today any different? But I've noticed he plays games in that way. And I have to learn not to play back.
So the conclusion is they will manipulate you if you let them.
Yes, yes, and I had to stop. I had to stop, put a stop to that. Um, but when they're so cute, it's hard.
What?
I said when they're so cute, it's hard. I just, feel like I
Yeah.
want to play the game.
Well, also, if you want to be manipulated, you let them.
Well,
Let them
very good
do
point. Very good point. Oh, yes. My guest this week has been Dr. Erhard Vogel, author of many books, and the most recent book is A Dialogue with Death, The Teacher of Life, an Ancient Story for the Modern World. So, Erhard, do you have any closing thoughts today on the topic of what our pets can teach us about life?
relationship.
Yeah.
They are the best relationship partners. And if you learn from them and become a relationship partner like they are, you'll have wonderful, loving, joyous, blissful relationships.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what they teach us.
Yeah. And what my biggest lesson from my dog is the living in the moment and seeing him just always happy and
Yeah.
how much joy he brings to other people with his happiness.
And if he has pain, he gets over it as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
My German Shepherd had his stomach turned over, which is
Mm.
very unusual for a young dog,
Mm-hmm.
but is not unusual for a large dog or
Okay.
horse or something like that. And what happens then when the stomach twists over, it shuts off the blood supply to the liver and the
Mm.
pancreas and other organs, and kidneys especially. And that happened to him to some degree, and he was in the hospital for 11 days,
Oh, wow.
which is a lot,
Yeah.
even though the stomach was returned to its original position in the first day at the vet. But because of the kidneys, he had to stay because his count was quite wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing was, I would go and visit him, and you could see that this was a special occasion for him. He was very, very happy and very sweet and loving and so on. And then when the vet came or the assistant came to pick him up, he didn't want to go, but he
Yeah.
went because he does what he needs to do,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
thing. Um, but the relationship was so sweet and so strong with him and so trusting. He trusted me
Yeah.
that I would come back, that this situation that he had been 11 days is an eternity for a dog, especially when he doesn't know when if he's going to ever get picked up again.
Right.
Apparently, he trusted, and he was so peaceful and calm once he was home, in spite of the fact that he had a lot of pains,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
But they cope with things because they focus on their life is focused on what is the important thing.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
I exist right now and that I'm with the environment and the person that I love. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I live that. I enjoy that. I can be lying down because I'm so weak, but I'm not too weak to not wag my tail.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
they'll wag their tail when you come by, even though they're in pain and they're weak.
I have the same experience with my dog with the trust because I take him, every so many weeks to get his nails trimmed. And I don't like to do it myself. So I take him in to get that done. And the assistants there at the veterinary office fight over who gets to hold him because they all love him so much because he's so calm when he goes in
Uh-huh.
there. And he'll put his paw, she says he'll just put his paw on her hand and just wait for her to trim his nails. But it's a
Oh,
very similar thing because he trusts that I'm gonna be there for him. He knows
yeah.
I'm gonna come back.
And actually, they are not being difficult or something. That's a very frightening situation. Have you
Hmm.
noticed they don't even like to have their paw held?
Yeah, my
Don't.
brother's dog is like that. He
Yeah,
will
they
not.
don't
Yeah.
because that impinges their freedom to run away if there's danger or so,
Hmm. Hmm.
impinges upon that freedom. And so for him to put his paw in the person's hand is the ultimate sign of trust.
Yeah.
So he said, so they do remember, they live in the moment, but they remember from the past. I did this before, I was afraid, but it turned out to be okay, so I shouldn't keep on being afraid. And that's a lesson to
That
learn.
is. Yeah.
Because human beings, they hold on to their pain and add to it and more and more and more and repeat it and think it and feel it over and over again when the cause of pain is long gone.
I totally agree. I mean, there's just so many lessons in our from our pets, and again, if we're willing to slow down enough and pay attention and listen, I think it's pets are amazing. And I want to thank you, Erhard, for joining us and for talking about pets.
Okay. Well, you have different ideas, Sloane.
Try to keep everybody guessing.
Yes. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk with you again.
You as well. And you've been listening to the Create What You Speak podcast brought to you by webtalkradio.net. You can also hear this podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and your favorite podcasting platform. I'm Sloane Freemont, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode of the Create What You Speak podcast, where we will continue to free our minds, expand our consciousness, and untangle those thoughts and patterns that keep us from living the life we desire. Check out my website, sloanefremont.com, to learn more.